Right, so hello guys. I know you've been waiting for this. Sorry, life has taken over. I've got many balls in the air at the moment. Trying to keep everybody happy. This is kind of taking a little bit of a backseat, but here we are, part 2, Smoky Blade. So you've got an internal combustion engine, and it's smoking out the exhaust. One of two things is happening. Well, actually, one of three things. It's either running perfectly, in which case you don't really get any smoke out of the tailpipe. It's running excessively rich, in which case you'll get black smoke under acceleration normally. That's not what's happening in this case. Two other things that will burn in the combustion chamber, or two other things that can potentially get into the combustion chamber that will cause it to smoke. And you already know what those are. There's either water, i.e. coolant, so the coolant that's keeping the engine cool, or oil. So when you've got a smoky engine, you need to decide, or you need to find out whether you've got water contamination, water getting into the combustion chamber, into the cylinder, or oil getting into the cylinder. If you've got oil burning problem, it might not be that the oil's getting into the cylinder. It might be a valve guide or a valve seal. Trying really hard to concentrate and not waffle here. Yeah, somebody mentioned in the comments that they thought the bike wasn't worth very much money, and was it really worth trying to repair? And I kind of agree with that point, but for not a huge amount of money we can, which is why I'm staring at these tools now, for not a huge amount of money we can probably get a fairly accurate idea of what's actually wrong with that without massively taking it apart. So I've got various tools here. These are the sort of, I've laid these out on the workbench. These are things you might use if you've got a smoky engine to try and determine what's going on without taking it apart too much. So that, actually, I've got the wrong one out. That's you've seen that before. That's a coolant system vacuum filler. I've got the other version of this which pressurizes a cooling system. Similar thing but different, if you see what I mean. So there's a few ways, a few things you can do. Bloody hell, Jim, don't waffle. You can pressurize a cooling system, see if water leaks into the engine somewhere. Good old-fashioned compression test. Most people have got a compression gauge. That can tell you quite a lot about whether there's any compression. And then my tool of choice for this sort of work is a cylinder leak tester. So I think that's we'll probably do a compression test first, and then we'll do a cylinder leak test. So I'll talk you through these tools. And then the other thing you can use, if you've got usually a head gasket problem, if you've got a head gasket gone, you can end up with combustion gases, so hydrocarbons in the coolant. So normally an engine with a blown head gasket will overheat, and the gases, when you either take the lid off the expansion bottle or off the radiator, the gases that come out of the cooling system, what am I trying to say? The gases have got hydrocarbons in. So what you can do is you can use this fluid. This is what you call a sniff test. Well, there's two types of sniff test. This is the sort of basic sniff test. Basically, you put some of this fluid in this little sniffer, and then you suck this little, you pump this little thing here, and you suck air up, and you bubble the air up through the fluid. And if there's any combustion gas present in the cooling system, the fluid changes colour. So that's a good diagnostic tool, a simple tool for diagnosing whether you've got a head gasket issue. My preferred way of doing that is actually to use a gas analyzer. So this is a normal 4-gas analyzer. You can, I'm not sure they're here, they're somewhere else. I've got some radiator caps. They're actually standard caps, and I've drilled the top in. I've put a little nipple in for this pipe to push into. What you can do, you can use your gas analyzer to sniff the air, and you can look for hydrocarbons in the gas coming out the top of the cooling system. That's a slightly more accurate way of knowing whether you've got combustion gas in the cooling system. So those two, that's sort of manual sniff test. That's a bit more electronic and a bit more high tech. We're probably not going to do these two. First thing I'm going to do, Jesus, I'm waffling, compression test, cylinder leak test. Now with the cylinder leak test, tell you what I'll do, I'll talk about this when we actually get to doing it. That's probably the best way, rather than me just standing here for 10 minutes waffling about these tools. Right, so take the plugs out. Often, oh bloody hell, here we go, waffle. Often if you take the plugs out, if it's one cylinder that's affected, you can often get an indication of, or get some direction. It's almost always with this sort of thing, it's just one of the cylinders that's affected. Sometimes the head gasket can go between two cylinders, in which case two cylinders are affected, and we can use this tool, the leak test, to find out which two cylinders are sort of leaking into each other. But anyway, we'll go to that in a minute. So I'm going to take the plugs out, we'll look at the plugs, see if we can get an indication of which cylinder it is, then we'll do a compression test, then we'll probably move on to the cylinder leak test. Right, to work. Talk to me, tell me. Is number one going to reveal any secrets? Try and do this without... Ooh. Okay. Focus. Yeah, it's not looking good, is he? It's all wet and horrible. Okay, I think number one is an offending cylinder. Okay, number two. Soaking as well. Focus. I'll lay these out on the bench and we'll have a better look at them. Okay, number two. Where are we? Number three. Oh my goodness, oh wow, that is... Whoa. Get it in shot. Get it to focus. Geez, this thing is pretty unhappy. Number four. It's all looking pretty horrible in there, isn't it? Let's lay them out on the bench, have a better look. Right, here's the plugs then. So far left is number one, far right's number four. Number one and four look much more oily than the centre two. It's probably worth saying at this point too, and I didn't mention this, I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit. When it was running, we could put our hand on the header pipes or use a temperature probe gauge, you know, one of those infrared temperature guns. Or even if you pass your thermal imaging camera, just to look at header pipe temperatures, just to give yourself a little bit of direction. That wouldn't have been a bad idea to do that really, but I got a little bit ahead of myself. So number one and four look oilier, and it's worth mentioning actually that it's oil not fuel on these plugs. They've been out now. The miracle of blooming video. It's like half an hour since I took these plugs out, and they've stayed wet. If it's fuel, you find that if the plug's wet with fuel, you'll find the fuel will evaporate over time. It's quite warm in the workshop here, and they'll sort of dry out and go sooty, and they've stayed wet. So I think this is definitely an oil. Well, it is an oil problem, given the blue smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe. Okay, compression test next. Right. Apologies for the bad light as well. I'm doing this in the evening. Better if I've got some daylight in the workshop. We're kind of relying on fluorescent light, which is never good. So compression test number one. Full throttle when you do a compression test, guys. So you get full volumetric efficiency from your engine. So full throttle. Just crank it, see what happens. I genuinely haven't tried it, so I don't know what I'm going to get. Holy moly. Okay. So what's that telling me? That is telling me that bore is really, really oily. It's telling me that mechanically it's in good condition. There's no massive head gasket leak. the compression rings at least are in good order. Doesn't mean that the oil control ring isn't completely buggered in that cylinder. So what we've got, that situation, that's way too high. That you'd expect it to top out at about 100 and absolute maximum, top it out about 180 psi, and it's gone way over 200 there, as you can see. So that bore is really, really oily. So how that oil's got in the bore, don't know yet, but there's a massive oil problem with that cylinder. And that was evident from the state of the number 1 spark plug. So right, so let's let the air out of this, and let's go and do number 2. Okay, so compression gauge, can't really see it, down into number 2 cylinder. See what we get. Fucking hell! Exactly the same story on number 2. Super oily cylinder. I'll actually look up the spec in the Honda book, and I'll flash it up on the screen now for maximum PSI for compression test, and you'll see that that's too high. Number 3 next. Number 3. Same again. Number 4. Right. What am I thinking? I'm thinking that's too high. What am I thinking? I'm thinking, and this, you should always do this really whenever possible, is you should have the engine hot. You should be doing a compression test after it's been running, and I've actually broken my own rule in my eagerness to get to do the test. So I'm just going to pop the plugs back in. I'm going to start this thing up, and I'm going to get it as hot as I can, or not as hot as I can, but I'm going to get it hot, and we're going to redo that test and see if we get a difference when the engine's warm. Right, back in a minute. You know what, it's bugging me that they're all the same. Those, I'd expect a discrepancy between cylinders. If there was some sort of mechanical fault, they're all high. And you know what I've just been thinking? Fuel contamination. And I bet some of you have thought this already. It did actually cross my mind a couple of days ago, just when I was thinking about filming this. The smoke is kind of whiter than you would expect from just burning oil, which made me think maybe there was a head gasket issue. I think I mentioned maybe some sort of head gasket problem in the first video. I'm thinking diesel in fuel. It doesn't smell diesely. Normally, if you've got diesel contamination in with petrol, you know, you stick your snozzle in the fuel tank and it's pretty obvious. I'm just going to drain the float bowls and have a goosey gander quickly. Right, so all 4 cylinders, high compression. Now, I've just been sort of going over in my mind the story that I got from the owner. One thing he did say was it was using loads of oil, and I said, you've checked the oil and it's definitely using oil. Yes, he says it's definitely using oil. He said, make sure you put oil in it before you run it, because the oil is really, really low. Well, I've just checked this. Look at this here. Sorry about the shit lighting, guys. As I say, it's as I bring the bike up level, it's about level now. So the owner had said the oil level was low and it had used all its oil. So we went after an oil burning problem. Let's make sure that stands down. It's got plenty of oil in it. He said it had no oil in it and put oil in it before you run it. How weird. I wonder. So not that I want to disbelieve the owner, but now I'm thinking, actually I should probably pay no attention and just sort of take it at face value, so to speak. I'm thinking now, maybe, because I think I mentioned in the first video, I said it looked a bit head gasket. It was a bit sort of white smoke. I'm thinking maybe fuel contamination. It doesn't smell diesely. Sometimes diesel contamination in the fuel will cause that sort of horrible bad running problem, white smoke in the exhaust. It's kind of got the symptoms, but it doesn't smell diesely. Normally you can smell diesel a mile away when somebody's... Anyway, I'm waffling. I'm just going to drain all the float bowls, and I'm going to hook my own fuel supply up to it, and we're going to run it, and basically see what happens. It could be that simple, which would surprise me and make the owner very happy. Anyway, back in a minute. Bloody hell, it looks a bit oily, you know that? Does that look oily to you, or is that my wishful thinking? I wonder if it is diesel. You know that I said the spark plugs were wet and it hadn't evaporated. You get that with diesel when you know, obviously it's on oil, isn't it? So it doesn't evaporate. And all four were the same, which is a bit weird. They all looked oily. Let's just spill some on some rag and see if it evaporates. Okay, so I've just been draining these carbs. Something doesn't seem quite right with this fuel. See, I've had some fuel in here and I've just tipped it away. Normally it dries up and evaporates much quicker than that. And just it seems, it doesn't smell at all diesel-y. Normally you can smell diesel a mile away. See, that's been on the back of my glove now for quite a while. And it's got a funny sort of oily sheen to it. I think we might be onto something, guys. High compression on all four cylinders, which is weird. You'd expect one cylinder to be, you know, the culprit, so to speak. Because the other, this might tie in as well, the other fact I was given from the owner was it happened all of a sudden. It was running perfectly, and then it was like something went wrong. And see, this is the thing, and I'm not blaming the customer, but if you actually listen to the customer, he said it went wrong all of a sudden and it started making a knocking sound and it had used all its oil in the crankcase. So based on that information, anybody would think, well, something catastrophically mechanical's gone wrong inside it, but actually it hasn't used any of the gearbox oil. The oil level's perfectly okay. The knocking sound is just because it's running so badly. Maybe he's put something he shouldn't have done in the fuel tank. I'm gonna put a set of plugs in it, and I'm gonna put some fresh fuel in these carbs, and I'm gonna run it. And you know what? I think that might fix it. Something is weird. If this had had fuel in, this would have been evaporated and dry by now. But it's not. It doesn't smell like diesel. Weird. Anyway, new plugs, put some fresh fuel in the carbs, and let's see what happens. So hopefully you can hear me over this bloody row of an exhaust pipe, although it does actually sound quite nice. I didn't even put new plugs in it, I just gave them a good clean. Partly because I haven't got any in stock at the moment, I'm waiting for a delivery. And some fresh fuel, and I think I might have fixed it. I'm not sure what was in that fuel, but something pretty horrible. It's still a bit smoky and a bit stinky, but hang on, let me turn it off. So it's still a bit smoky and a bit stinky, but it's clearing as it gets hotter. You know, I would imagine if it's been running on diesel or something for a while, you know, the bores are all soaking wet with it. The inside of the downpipes are soaking wet with it. In fact, here's a bit of a telltale. So the engine's off. So that suggests that the stuff on the inside of the exhaust pipe burning still. What I'm going to do then, I'm 90% sure I've got to the bottom of this, so I'm going to I'm going to put it back together, and I'm going to have a run on it, a proper ride. Make sure it clears. I think what I want to do really is to do a proper job. I'll get a new set of plugs for it. I'm going to get some carb repair kits for it. So that's, you don't get much. You get a float bowl gasket and a float needle valve. I'm going to take the carbs off, give them a proper clean. New float bowl gasket, new float needle valve, give them a good clean. New set of plugs. I'll treat it to oil and filter as well. I think it would be rude not to do that. Put it all back together. Go and have a proper ride on it. But I think I've done it. I think we're fixed. I wanted to show you the cylinder leak test in action. So what I'm going to do, I'll go ride it, assuming it's okay. We'll revisit the compression test, and you can see that the compression pressure would have come down, and then we'll do just out of interest, we'll do a cylinder leak test as well. But what I think I'll probably do is I'll do that as a separate video, and I'll do a how to do a compression test and how valuable a cylinder leak tester is, and I can go into then a bit more detail about, because what you do with a cylinder leak test is you have the cylinder at top dead center with both valves shut, and you're pressurizing the combustion chamber and the cylinder, and then you can look for inlet or exhaust valve leaks, you can look for head gasket leaks, you can look for cylinders to cylinder leaks, you can do all sorts of tests with this. So it's kind of worthy of a video on its own. Right, there might be a part 3, there might not. You know what, there will be a part 3. I'm going to get it together. Maybe I'll do some GoPro footage of road testing it and stuff. Possibly I'll set my GoPro up looking at the exhaust pipe and the clouds of smoke that's probably going to come out the back of it. Anyway, that's the end of part 3. That's the end of part 2. I think we've probably fixed it, but there will be a part 3 of cleaning the carbs and road testing it and so on and so forth. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for all the cool comments. Like and subscribe, as they say. And if you can help, there's a Patreon thingy bob now, but it's not necessary. You'll still get all my content. But if you want to feel like you want to support me, and I'm doing this after hours, and there is a beer involved over there on my workbench. Most of these videos I'm going to do for YouTube are going to be sort of after hours stuff, because I've got my head down working, trying to make a living in the daytime. But that's the Patreon idea, really. It's I'm waffling, but the idea is if I can get enough Patreon support, I could probably do a couple of days a month and not stress too much about making money. Anyway, thanks, guys. See you in part 3.